Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Well, hello, my Next Level friends. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Art Next Level podcast. Today, I want to share with you an interview with Claire Becker. She's an artist from Mexico City that you do not want to miss. But before I do that, I want to also invite you to check out my live show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday that's called Breakfast with Sergio. This is a live show that I have on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can also catch all the episodes in YouTube. In this Breakfast with Sergio, what I do is kind of share business insights that are important for your art career. So don't miss it. Check it out. You can also find it as an audio podcast in iTunes or Google Play or Podcasted or Anchor FM. So hope to check it out, and I hope to see you at Breakfast with Sergio. Well, my guest for today is Claire Becker. Claire was born in Paris, France. She grew up in Strasbourg, where she studied art, literature, music, theater, and dance. At the age of 22, she left France to cross the Atlantic Ocean to Washington, D.C. She has lived in the United States, a short time in Tokyo, and presently lives and works in Mexico City. Her work has been recognized with several grants and prizes and is part of important private art collections, museums collections, and public spaces. She has participated in more than 80 exhibitions and international shows in galleries, art fairs, and museums in Mexico, USA, Canada, Chile, Cuba, Australia, Singapore, China, France, Germany, and Italy. She has presented more than 20 solo exhibitions in galleries, museums, and public spaces, and I am super excited to have in the podcast today, Claire Becker. Hi, Claire. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sergio. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Awesome. Are you ready to take us to the next level?
I am, of course.
Awesome. Claire, I want to welcome you to the Art Next Level podcast. I am super excited that we are here talking with you, talking about your trajectory as an artist, your story. So I'm really looking forward to this interview. And also, you and I, we had a chance to meet just a few months ago, not too long ago, in Mexico City, which was the first time that I met you and then became aware of your work. And it was a really nice conversation that we had. Great time there with also other artists that we share in Mexico City. And now it's really nice to talk to you here and share your story also with our friends here at the Art Next Level. So I'm super excited for that. How are things going in Mexico right now?
Very fine. We have a nice weather. Mm-hmm. And I'm also really excited and happy because I feel like we are talking next to each other, mm-hmm. since we met in person a while ago here. So I feel very comfortable.
And we had an amazing pozole after the meeting with the artists that we had. We
did.
We all went to a nice restaurant down the street, and we had amazing pozole, which for me, living here in Chicago, is one of those things that I really miss the food. Because I grew up in Mexico City. For those of you who do not know, I grew up in Mexico City. Came to Chicago when I was 16 years old. So for me, going back home to Mexico, to my roots, and to the food that's over there, I enjoy every bite of it, every minute of it. So that pozole dinner, that was amazing.
Yeah, that was great. We had a great time with many artists, and also because you are a part of one of my projects, which is small in size, you remember?
Oh, but, yes.
It's very interesting. The little book that I have is the earring book, in which my artist friends do a little drawing for me, and so I want to thank you for participating.
That was
really, really nice drawing for that small space.
That was really awesome because, and kind of to give a little story to our friends. So we were talking after the event that we had in Mexico City, and you and I were chatting, and then I said, oh, you have such a really cool earrings, which your earrings are actually like a little sketchbook or a little book, right, with actual pages. And then I was really surprised that you took off the earring and you showed me a blank page.
Yes.
And you invited me to participate in the project. And I was like, oh, that is so cool. So I did a little drawing there to be part now of your movable art project, right? It's like
yes, I am. Yes, you are. We are.
You are curating your earrings.
Yes.
So how many artists do you have already in the booklet?
Well, the right ear is almost filled. I haven't counted it.
Uh-huh.
And on the left side, I decided to, because I also love poetry and I also write, so I decided that the left ear, well, actually I can change right and left, of course, but
Right.
the other little book is dedicated to poetry. So that one I just started it, and I have one poem from, one poetic phrase from one poet here. So this is part of the complementary project of the
That is
two things
awesome.
I really love, art and poetry.
That is very cool. So you have one for the visual arts and then one for the written word. That is beautiful project. That's amazing.
Yes, that's great.
Well, Claire, let's talk a little bit about your story. I had a little bit of a chance to hear some of it while we were having dinner in the middle of the pozole, which was awesome. But let's talk a little bit about now in more detail your story, which I find fascinating. So tell us where you grew up and how was your childhood?
Well, I'm French, and I was born in Paris, which I love Paris, but it's not a city where I really lived my life. It's like a city where I go to visit and enjoy. Because when I was 5 years old, we moved to Strasbourg, which is a beautiful town, border of Germany, and that's where I went to school. So I studied art since very young. This is one thing I always knew right from the start. I love life, and so I cannot dissociate life from being part of its creation. And the thing I didn't know is what kind of art will I do when I grow up, because I wanted to do everything. I wanted to be a poet, actress, dancer, artist, all of these things at once. So that was for me a little bit strange to have to decide. It was something that was tearing me apart inside. And actually I did many of these things sort of in like a spiraling evolution, I feel, because I was allowed, and my family always gave me the chance to study all kind of art, visual arts, since very young. But what I really wanted to do was dancing. I wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to be a ballerina, and that was forbidden when I was little. I don't exactly know the real reason behind it, but I took it very seriously. So when I was about 17 years old, I saw a contemporary dance ballet on the television. And I had to run to my room crying because I said, I cannot live without doing this. This is what I have to do. So somehow, at that time I was studying theater to be an actress at the conservatory. And I had studied music many years. I had studied for classic guitar, pushed by my parents because music was part of the education. Not dance, but music, yes, you know.
Right.
So somehow I was 18 years old, and I had made some money during the summertime. And coming back home, I went straight to the dance school that my friends at the theater class had recommended me. And I put all my money on the counter and I said, how many classes can I take with that?
Oh, wow.
And so I got an inscription for adult beginner in the evening. And after the first class, the teacher, she talked to me and she said, I want to know where you studied dance, because you are a dancer. Don't lie to me. And I said, no, this is my first class. So, well, anyway, after that moment, I basically lived my life in the dance studio because she gave me a scholarship to study all the classes besides the ones I could afford.
Wow.
And that's how I started my life of a dancer.
So you had it in the blood. You already had it in you to follow this.
Oh yes, I was that I had no doubt. This was really something so important, and
So-
I was lucky to start dancing professionally and give classes just after 1 year or a year and a half or so.
Oh, wow.
After a couple of years in Strasbourg, I decided to not pursue my career as an actress, because really now I was doing what I thought was what I really was meant to do. And then we moved to the States. My parents went to Washington, D.C., and I said, okay, I go with you. They said, come, and they pay for me the inscription in the Washington School of Ballet.
Okay.
But from there, we went to visit New York, and that was the other moment that was very important in my life, because that visit in New York was the moment where I said, this is where I want to live. This is for me. This is my city. So when they all went back to France after the year, I had gotten a dance scholarship, and I stayed in New York for a year.
Oh, wow.
And then a second year, and actually I lived there 10 years. That was a wonderful experience of all kind. And during all that time, I didn't stop doing art. I also was doing painting, basically, drawings and working with pastel. That was the thing I liked the most. And during all that time, how to say that? Well, so many things happen, of course, in the life. It's hard to shorten it so much, but
Right.
there was a point where I became a little bit frustrated with dance, because I wanted to do choreography and do creations, and I had some crazy ideas, and I thought I will not be able to do that part, because I felt alone in this. This is not, I didn't grow up in the environment of dancing with all the contacts and stuff, so I always felt a little bit like an outsider.
Okay.
Also, I got hurt many times. So by chance, one day, that also happens. Everything seems to happen like this, like pinpoint in different time in my life.
Yeah.
I walked into a sculpture studio in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, which is this big Gothic cathedral in New York. That everything is done by hand, like old time. And in the crypt, there is this huge studio where a sculptor is doing the big monuments. And there was a scholarship program to study sculpture.
Oh, up to that point, had you done sculpture before, or it was kind of like the first introduction to that?
Well, I've did it when I was at school and when I was little, but otherwise I was not dedicated at that, no.
Yeah.
Yet I had started to do, because I always loved pottery, so I was taking a workshop of pottery in New York, and I had started to do my own jewelry line. So I was little by little going back to working with the third dimension,
Right.
And at that moment in the studio, when I saw that, I said, this is what I want to do. So somehow I talked to the sculptor there, and I said, I want to have a scholarship here and study. So he gave me a chance to show him something, gave me some clay in my hand, and said, come back next week. And and that's what I did. Although I did the piece, the night before, because I was so nervous about what am I going to do.
Yeah. But it's that pressure, right? That kind of brings the best out of us.
Right. So he loved the piece I made, and gave me the chance to be part of the program.
Amazing.
Which I actually followed just halfway, because I already had very clearly in mind what kind of things I wanted to do. And the study here was very academical, so I was sort of a rebel, a little bit like it happened all my life. And that's how I went back to, I came to sculpture again. But the strange thing is, for me, it was not something so different from dancing.
Okay.
Because what I like in dance was the same thing that I liked in sculpture, which means I'm really intrigued and I'm really fascinated by how the life energy can take any kind of shape that you give it. So in dance, it was through the body that you can develop it and form it and make it your instrument so that you can control and express yourself through that energy, like what the Chinese call qi. And you feel it through your body, and it's really an exhilarating experience. And in sculpture, what I loved was to take a piece of clay or whatever that has no shape, and through the energy in your hand and your spirit and all your being, you can really transform it into something that has meaning.
Right. And even in your sculptural pieces, I see that there's almost like this dance element in it. I mean, the form, it not only takes shape, but it also is at play. It's at constant movement. It's at play with the space, with the environment. It seems like almost like they're twisting and moving and turning in at every direction, which I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe that also brings in some of the experience of the body being the tool of the dancer.
Exactly. I don't do figurative dancing, but the principle is the same, is to explore how through the movements, through that life energy, we can actually express and show emotion. So that play with being in balance and off balance, falling and getting up, or being joyful or sad. And that especially is very strong in my latest work, the series called Involutati, because from that moment in the crypt where I said, okay, this is what I wanted to do, from today, a little bit more than 20 years have passed, so I did have time to really work and develop my expression through sculpture.
So how did you end up in Mexico City? You know, from being in New York, and you're working with sculpture, you're kind of having your moment there. So why, how did you end up in Mexico City?
Well, New York was, as I told you, like a really explosive love I had for the city, and I lived it fully. Being a dancer, you like it's like the bohemian life,
Right.
Just a little studio or sharing a room with friends, and you live life to the fullest. But when I start doing sculpture, then I find myself needed some space to work.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time in my house, which I had to rent a bigger house, so I had to not be in Manhattan, but a little bit outside in Queens. And I found myself spending many, many hours inside my studio, inside my home, developing my work. So I started dreaming, well, maybe being in a country with a lot of sun, not so cold in the winter, that could be a nice change. And then I met a Mexican artist who invited me to go to Mexico with him. And without thinking, I said yes. And that's how I ended up in Mexico.
Okay.
And I stayed there, although I'm not with that man anymore, but I decided to stay in Mexico because I love the country. I love everything, and it's also a very nice place to work and to create.
And so now you are based now in Mexico City. That's where you have your studio. And is that the place that like where you settled from the beginning in Mexico City, or also you move around to other states?
No, first I arrived to Veracruz, to
Okay.
Xalapa, Veracruz, in the state of Veracruz, which is a small town, not much happening, and that was the point, to really get into myself and create. And when I got separated, I decided to move back to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been in Mexico now 8 years.
Wonderful, beautiful. And
Mexico
City
City.
is quite a city, right? There's a lot of activity, there's a lot of action, particularly going on right now. A lot of art and a lot of artists there. So I think it's a great fit, a great perfect place to be there and to be
It's
part
amazing.
of the community. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, everything happening. You have to find a balance between taking advantage of all the offer and see things, exhibition, and going out, but also remember
You also have to make
in
art.
your studio, working and stay at home. And so I love the days when I don't have to go out.
Yeah. Especially with the traffic there, some of my friends don't believe me. Like in Mexico City, if you're gonna go somewhere, it's gonna take you the whole day, because it's the traffic is just horrendous. Just going.
It is.
Going a
it
few.
is. It's amazing.
Yeah, going like a few miles is like a whole day trip. I mean, it's just incredibly crazy.
Yeah, I remember when in the Holy Week, when they call it here, Semana Santa, for Easter, everybody leaves the city, and then suddenly. I remember one year I said, oh, but everything is so close by. You get there in 15, 20 minutes.
Exactly.
I thought it was much further. So the problem is really basically the traffic, because we have, streets that cross the whole city. And so...
Yeah, I know. It's I had to get used to that because, going from there, from here to there, and not being used to being in Mexico City, I'm making my itinerary like today I'm going to go here, here, and here. And then my friend over there is like, no, you won't have time to do that. You just pick one. Pick one, because you won't have time to go to 3 places. And, we tried, and I couldn't make it.
Yeah, but we're lucky as artists. We have our own schedule, so I never make an appointment at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, because I know I would have to be in the traffic of all the people going to work. So
absolutely,
always trying to play with the hours and not suffer so much, because sometimes you can't avoid it. So.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about now your art. Now we heard little bit of your story, how you ended up in Mexico City. That's where you are based now. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing now. How would you describe it to our friends who are listening here in the podcast? How would you describe the current work that you are making in the studio right now? And what's kind of exciting for you in the studio right now?
Okay, right now I'm in a moment of transition, I think, because I'm finally seeing the last few pieces missing to a series called Involutati, which I've been working for the past few years.
Okay.
And as I was telling you a while ago, this series is like going back to the basics, to what really inspired me at the beginning. Because in between, I've done works that are more conceptual and working on very specific themes, so it's more like an intellectual approach. But this one is really instinctive. And I think it has to come to do with moments where you have to go back to basics and really ask again, why am I doing this? What's important for me in life? So the contact with the clay is always something very strong for me. And maybe there was some frustration that also happens a little bit with that big change in my life. And through this contact with the clay, what the point is of this work is to trust that something special and wonderful is going to happen that I don't need to control. So there is this trust of this special energy, life energy that we all have, this creative energy that goes through us, and we have to be like a conduct and not control it so much. So this first part is twist and pull the clay until something really special happens. And then as a second stage, of course, my experience as an artist is looking at that result and work on it. And that part can last for quite a while. So it makes it a piece that is a whole, and I can look at it in different angles, and it all makes sense within itself. There is this movement that we were talking about. And the strange thing is that basically all the pieces I made with this intention end up looking like silhouettes of of people, men, women. Well, there can be a lot of interpretation here, and through the movement, what they communicate are feelings, but really strong feelings, basic feelings that we all share as human beings in our evolution. So this series became a little bit like I said, I dressed the body and I undressed the soul.
Okay.
Because in my previous work, I have series where I really work with parts of the human body. I'm in love with the sensual shapes of the human body. Not in the traditional sense, but in the sense that it communicates always this sensibility,
Right.
So it's a little bit a break from the work I was doing before.
Got it. So, like, for example, I'm looking at the pieces that are like Materia Dispuesta. Is it something related to that kind of?
Exactly. The first pieces that you see in the little catalog that you have are the first 3 pieces of this series.
Oh, beautiful.
And Materia Dispuesta, means to become totally available for what needs to be done. So the point was that I, as an artist, become Materia Dispuesta for the creation, the same way as the clay in my hand is Materia Dispuesta. Because the clay cannot say, oh, no, I don't want to take this shape. I want to be more this way or that way. So it's like creating a circle of creation, no? Where everybody has its part, but nobody has full control.
Right. So they start as clay pieces, and then, in terms of material, how do they become as a finished product?
So I work with the pieces in a small size because it needs to fit in my hands, and also because that way I can work faster to look at the shapes. Because I don't have any preconceived idea. I have no idea what's going to come out.
Okay.
And when the piece is finished, then I can decide what size it has to look to be in when it's going to be a real piece for show. And some of them are small and some of them are big. I'm finishing right now one that is more than 2 meters and one has to be 3 meters. I have one, it comes from basically 0.5 meter to 3 meter high.
Okay.
And I do, of course, I have to do the big size sculpture, do the silicone mold, and from the silicone mold I do the pieces in a fiberglass, polished fiberglass, and they can be polished with the color or have paint that is like a shiny paint, like what is used for the cars.
Right. And like an enamel finish, right? Like a gloss enamel.
Right. Bright colors, but now that I have many pieces, I can also vary it. And some they look like marble, some look like stone, etc. So it's very different.
There's a beautiful one here. I mean, they're all beautiful, but there's one that really catches my attention in the booklet. It's a green one. It's a green piece. I'm not sure how big that is, but it almost has a mysterious appearance to it too. There's also the movement. There's the rotation of the form. It has this appearance that it's just trying to leave the surface and kind of go up to the sky, to the space, and maybe that's kind of what gives it that spiritual motion. And so, but there's also a wider base, so it seems like there's also like these 2 forces, right? That which keeps it down, and then the other one that is pulling it up. And as it pulls up, it twists and turns. So it's one of my favorite pieces. I just want to say it's just a beautiful piece. I read a lot into it.
Oh wow, that is so great that you see all of this, because it is what's the essence of the piece. It is the essence of these pieces. Display between being as human being. We are both material and spiritual. And for me, this has been a very strong dilemma until I could actually understand how we can reconciliate both. My first sculpture show was called Reconciliation, because the whole point was how can I be both spiritual and material, and without this being a contradiction? So I understand, of course, now we are a spiritual being making the experience of life through the material. So I can embrace the material. In fact, it's also strange for somebody like me that is really interested in the spirituality to have chosen a profession that is so anchored in material.
Right, and in particular, yes, sculpture, which it's heavy, it's volume.
It's heavy. Sculpture is like, it's very heavy sometimes, and go around, you have to carry pieces and the molds and everything. I'm very far away from my little room in New York, when I was a dancer. So, but I accept that because I understood if I'm going to be making the experience of life in the body, well, then make the experience full and try to understand how that matter that is at our disposal can be part of that creation, and how can we express ourselves through that.
Right.
Because of course this is going to stay here.
Right.
In this world we cannot take it with us, but at least can leave it as something meaningful.
And then there's this other aspect of, as you forming the work with your hands, you are in touch with the earth, which is, the clay itself, and kind of, the physicality of the world itself, the clay, how close can you get to the earth as actually touching it and molding it and giving it a form as you also experience your own spirituality, and like you say, those parallels that sometimes are kind of hard to understand, hard to put together in one sentence, the physical and the invisible, right? The apparent and the unknown, the mystery and the experienceable. So I think that's what I really find fascinating about your art, those parallels that continue to evolve. So you come to the work first as attracted by the beauty of the piece, but then you start reading all these other elements into it, which I think is really nice.
Well, this is so important what you're saying about the earth, because I think something so crucial right now for humanity is to go back to the contact with the earth that we have lost in every sense, and we are destroying it because we don't know that is living and that it's part of our life. It's indissociable. And so going back to that sensation of the earth as being something, not something, but like a being, like the energy that gives us life, is very, very important.
Right. That's amazing.
It's so healing also. I'm working with that, I wrote some time ago, I said I became so sophisticated that it's almost impossible for me to understand how a flower can come out of the earth by itself without doing anything, But going back to this awesome mystery and realize it's still present and it's still the essence of everything, because if a flower cannot open and just give its beauty to the world, then nothing else can happen in this world. So it is really important to go back to this basic meaning of being in this planet.
Right. Yeah, and the fragility of it all, right? I mean, the fact that the ecosystem kind of depends on each element in order to exist, to be what it is now, and the damage that we are causing as human beings because of our own detachment from it and feeling that we know more because we are with more technology, which is a good thing, but at the same time, kind of we have been forgotten, how we got here from the first place.
Right. And the serie in Volutati is about that. It's about, I call it pure sculpture, because I have nothing against technology, of course, and there's some incredible, beautiful pieces of sculpture made with technology. But this particular series is me and the clay and nothing else. Right. No technology, no nothing, And yet the point is to find an expression that is totally from the experience of today.
Wow. Well, amazing, beautiful. Well, thank you, Claire, for that, kind of for sharing your work. So tell me a little bit about what's one of your greatest challenges that you had to overcome as an artist in your trajectory?
Many of them.
Yeah.
I would
what would
say
be one that you say it was kind of memorable for you?
Okay. One is that I think I'm just overcoming now, which is to accept that you can be an artist that is interested in many different aspects of life. And so I sort of grow horizontally and not so much vertically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if, how can I say that? It's like a flower that opens many petals, but that doesn't have a stem that goes up and is very visible. Like the today's society is a lot about following one path and going up and have visibility. So sometimes, sometimes I need to write, and so I can just forget about everything else and spend several days writing. Or then I can go back to working on my sculpture, and then I need to take care of some more spiritual aspects and psychological aspects. And at the end, I realized it's okay. I can do everything,
right.
Because now I can see the poetry comes together with the sculpture and the philosophical aspect of life, which is at the same time it's nothing new, but it's new for everybody because everybody has a different way of integrating all these aspects in their life. So accepting this is a big challenge. And the other one is, of course, also finding the balance between the time where you create and the time where you have to do the business part of it,
which I think is, for everybody who's listening to the podcast, we all kind of have to juggle those things, right? And there's no such thing as perfect balance, I believe, right? I mean, there's sometimes you have to give more time to something, sometimes you have to give more time to another, but it's the understanding of what you're doing, that thing that matters. And I could not agree with you more on the first one that you mentioned too, of kind of understanding how the art career doesn't necessarily have to be just one path, but they may have many arms, right? Almost like the way I see it is like this beautiful tree that has a good root, but then it also at the top it spreads out into various directions. It's the same tree. It all flows from the same source, but it has all these beautiful arms that that each one has life of its own. And for me, it has been kind of one of the things that I also been like you, looking at the way I run my art career, is I enjoy many things, like such as this, the podcast. For me, I'm actually sitting right next to my studio. I could be doing art in my studio, but yet I decided this is important for me. This is also part of me being an artist, being here with you right now, Claire, and having this conversation. It enriches me as an artist as well, and it provides me an energy that when we're done with the podcast, when I go back in the studio, I don't feel like I was wasting time or I was cheating my art because I wasn't in the studio, but rather I was doing the podcast, and that I have come to understand and to be at peace with, and realize that my art career is all these different parts that I do. Is when I do a talk with artists, or when I doing this, or when I'm doing that, it's all part of what I call my art career, right? And it's not just
beautiful.
Yeah, it's not just when I walk in the studio that I'm an artist. I'm an artist every time, when I'm having breakfast and when I'm doing all these
and
other
it's great
things.
you're doing all of this. This is something I admire a lot, because I see you dedicate a lot of your time in helping other artists and sharing your experience, and this is wonderful. And all of this that we do as a community is very enriching.
Right.
It's like a fuel, it's like fuel for your own creation afterwards.
Exactly. But it
I
took
remember
me a while to understand.
Yeah, when I started teaching dance, I realized how much we learn by teaching others. It's amazing.
Exactly. So, Claire, what has been also, we talk about some of the struggles, but what has been some of the highlights of your career, some of the things that you've been really proud about?
Well, a few years ago, I was invited to exhibit at the Venice Biennale one big sculpture, bronze sculpture, very big size. And I felt terrorized because I felt, how am I going to do this? There was little time, and I couldn't do it by myself. So that was really one moment when I said, I cannot miss the chance, and I got to get out of here, and find sponsors and find help. So that was a determining point of being strongly determined to say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm offering you, and help me. Not help me, but be part of it. Be part of it, and support the arts. So everything went well on that. I could actually bring the piece right on time, and
beautiful.
And that felt like a miracle, but it did happen. So I know that is always a possibility. And then last year I went to Australia to participate in a sculpture show outdoor in the woods that was wonderful, right in the suburbs of Sydney. And there was another moment where I said, okay, just go on the adventure on the other side of the world, and had a great time, met some wonderful people, wonderful artists, and I think it's so great to feel like you can go around the world so easily when you put your mind into it, when there's the opportunity.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's beautiful. That's awesome. Congratulations on those things. That's great. And also this exhibition that you gave me, this catalog, looks like it was also a terrific exhibit at the Museum of Arte Contemporáneo in Yucatan, which looks also like it was a beautiful show.
Yeah, that was a couple of years, like 3-4 years ago. And now I'm preparing a show for the Zócalo of the south of Mexico, Tlalpan.
Okay.
And so it's an exhibition. I like this because I love my work to be shared with people. So it's a public space. And
wonderful. So it's going to be an outdoor show?
It's an outdoor show with big sculptures that are very ludical, fun. Some of them that are in the small catalog that you have. The work with the dices that that have faces and expression. And it's a whole game about being children and knowing how exciting life is and what kind of experience are we going to get. And actually a question about we need to do many, many experiences in order to understand life, not just a few.
Awesome. Fabulous. Well, yeah, please also send us an invitation. It will be great. We can post it here as well for our friends on the Art Next Level. And what we're going to do is, if you are interested on checking out Claire's work, we're going to post some pictures in the website for the episode so you guys can see it. And Claire, why don't you share also, as we get ready to close, your website or social media, Instagram, where can we find you? Where can our friends, can visit you and follow you through social media?
Of course, I have a website, which is clairebecker.com. Claire, should I spell it? CLAIREBECKER.com. That's my website. It's pretty complete. And then I'm in Instagram. I think, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at this. I think it's Claire Becker Artist, which is the same as my Facebook page, Claire Becker Artist.
Wonderful. That should be easy to find you.
And also, I'm inviting you. There is an article, an interview about my work in Volutati that just came out in this international contemporary art magazine, which is called Arte al Límite, which is a bilingual Spanish and English magazine from Chile. So you can check on the page of Arte al Límite.
Wonderful.
In the last number of the magazine. I think it's number 89.
Okay.
There is an article, and I talk about a little bit what we talked about today on Involutati.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Claire, again for sharing your story, for sharing your highlights also as well and your struggles as an artist. It's been my pleasure to have this conversation with you. We look forward to seeing more of your work online and hopefully in person too. Next time I go to Mexico City, that would be really, really awesome. And
well, that would be great to see you again here.
Yes, of course. Of course, I'm planning to probably be there again this summer when I go back for my show at the Museum of Querétaro. So I'll probably be doing another little trip there. So we'll be in touch.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you so much for the invitation. That was really nice to speak with you. And thank you so much also for understanding about my work in such a deep way. I'm really touched.
Awesome. Thank you, Claire. Thank you for being with us. And I want to thank all our friends who are listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed my conversation here with Claire, please share it with a friend. That would be something that you can do to help us get this podcast to a lot more people. So thanks, everybody. And I will see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.